Hey everyone, Evan Dammarell here. I'm going solo once again. My co-host Chris Manning will be back with me tomorrow, but first, we got to talk about this weekend for Cleveland. Like a long vacation, it's a lot to unpack, so let's do it together. But before we get started, today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Hey everyone, Evan Dammarell here again if you skipped the intro. But on Friday night, the Cavs saw their 5-game losing streak come to an end against a very stinky, at least coming in, Charlotte Hornets squad. The problem is it took 2 overtime periods to get there, but at the end of the day, shrug, and you have to say a win is a win. At the top, you saw JB Bickerstaff stay true to his word, and he shook up the rotation, sending Caris Levert to the bench and promoting Mars Stevens to the starting lineup. On Friday's show, I talked a little bit about how this is the more logical change for Cleveland to try out, since at the end of the day, defensively, the trio of Caris Levert, Darius Garland, and Donovan Mitchell just doesn't work functionally. And more than anything, and JB Bickerstaff touched on this on Sunday's game, or prior to Sunday's game rather, against the Atlanta Hawks, that you want to maximize Caris Levert as your super six man, and in order to do that, you need more touches and shot opportunities, and he wasn't quite getting that, having to play with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, and it feels like you're not maximizing the offensive potential that Caris Levert is as a player. And sure, you're getting rebounding, you were getting some defense. Again, he's not a defensive stopper, and it's remiss of you to think that. And you were getting playmaking from him, which is great at the end of the day. I think that's honestly the self-actualized version of what the Cavs were hoping. They traded a first-round pick to the Indiana Pacers for when they got Levert in the first place, and they were able to then get another first-round pick by missing the playoffs and then getting Donovan Mitchell. So, things are coming up Millhouse for the Cavs. But it just made sense to take Caris Levert and send him off the bench and let him be your sixth man. And we'll see how this evolves over time, and we'll touch on more on why this will be worth monitoring long-term, because some stuff happened on Sunday, but we'll talk about that in segment 3. And the other thing is, Stevens is just always ready to go whenever Bickerstaff calls on him, especially on defense. Having him out there gives Cleveland a lot of creativity to switch players 2 through 5 at times, and it creates a lot of headaches for opponents while the Cavs stick to their core identity, which obviously at the end of the day is a defensive first team where their defense leads to offense. Obviously adding Donovan Mitchell gives you a huge shot in the arm offensively in terms of three-point shooting, playmaking, expectations, etc., and so on. So I think it's just like a good, healthy balance where Stevens is a low-maintenance dude who doesn't require a lot of shot opportunities. Like, he could be effective for you as a starting 3 in the starting 5 of Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen, where he gives you a couple points a night, and you more so rely on him on defense. And if he is wide open at 3, at three-point range, like you saw against Charlotte and also against Atlanta on Sunday, which we'll, again, touch on a little bit, but he can take and make those opportunities and convert on them. He also did against the Bucks as well, which I think helped spur this momentum. And Stevens has been great. I think he is testament to the Charge organization, or more so, sorry, not the Charge organization, but the Cavs properly using your two ways and developing in-house talent that they can use as high-quality depth in the event that they need to shake up the rotation, or like last season when players were hurt, they had to lean on Lamar Stevens and he played really well. But the other big notable about this game against Charlotte, other than the fact that it went into double overtime and it should have ended an hour ago because the Cavs blew a lead, and it's just impressive that they did that, but it was Evan Mobley. Head coach JB Bickerstaff said this was his best game of the season, and I'd argue it's the best season of his NBA career, and you can argue with me in the comments. I ain't going to read them because I don't check that. But Evan Mobley had 21 points, 18 rebounds, 2 blocks, and 5 assists, including the one that led to a massive, and I mean massive, Darius Garland three-pointer to keep the momentum going and to force overtime for the Cavs. And if Mobley doesn't have the foresight and wherewithal to, one, grab that offensive board and then immediately kick it out to Garland floating on the perimeter, like the Cavs weren't going to win that game, clearly, or at least force overtime at that point, because it still felt a little dicey because it's just it's a tough game for the Cavs. They're losing 5 in a row. I think there's 5 very frustrating losses for them, and at the end of the day, they're able to find a way to maximize their potential and find a way to win this game. And it's also where you kind of saw them growing up in real time, Mobley especially, because the youth and the experience the Cavs are dealing with, and I think if you're a regular listener to this show, you'll know this. Chris and I have talked about this a lot, where the Cavs are young and inexperienced. They've never made the playoffs before. Donovan Mitchell and Chetty Osman, technically speaking, and then, of course, Donovan Mitchell as well, like the most seasoned players on this roster. Jared Allen, too, and Caris Levert, I guess, with the Nets. But you're more so focusing on Love, who's a champion, Osman, who's made the NBA Finals, and Donovan Mitchell, who's just been consistently a hot player. But the rest of these like core guys on this team have never done anything in their NBA career up to this point, and they still have a lot to prove. And I think you're seeing a little bit of the issues you saw last year, where when games are tight, the Cavs kind of fall apart at the seams. JB Bickerstaff can only do so much. He can't physically go out there and play for these players, but you saw it in the 5-game losing streak with like bad execution or bad late game offensive sets, or the Cavs kind of playing a bit of hero ball where it's like Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland doing my turn, your turn stuff, where they both would take like bad shots and they weren't really playing within their offensive system or the proper flow. And I don't know. It's interesting to watch, but at least in this game against Charlotte, it, again, took 2 overtimes when it probably shouldn't have, but you saw them grow up a little bit in real time, or like this Cavs team kind of dug deep and they had the gumption and the wherewithal to gut check heading into overtime and then the second overtime to win this game. And at the end of the day, like I said at the top, a win is a win, no matter how ugly it is. And if you're the Cavs, it gets the monkey off your back, it gets the stink out of the locker room, and you can reshift your focus and just kind of plan ahead for what the upcoming game is, which is the Heat on Sunday and then the Hawks on Monday, which we'll talk about in the next segment, of course, and then the Blazers on Wednesday, and then you focus on the Pistons on Sunday after that. Like, there's time for rest and everything in between, so you kind of leave it all on the line. You try to just, like, get this just bad omen surrounding this locker room and this team just off you, and then you can focus on things again and just kind of maybe fix the smaller and the obviously bigger mistakes, because the late game execution was just awful in this game. And I think that's what really hurt the Cavs the most, because I think they blew a 10-point lead with like less than 2 minutes to go, or even less than a minute. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was a tough game to watch the Cavs kind of execute poorly down the stretch, but they were able to find a way to win. A lot of it was Darius Garland going absolutely bonkers. But again, if we had to give a player of the game for this one, it's Evan Mobley by and far. Like, he was the key two-way player for the Cavs, and he did so much for them on either end of the floor. And again, if he didn't make that pass to Darius Garland at the end of the fourth quarter or so, the Cavs wouldn't be in the situation, and they'd have to be reshifting their focus to a Miami team on Sunday, when there's just a lot of just outside pressure and maybe the weight of expectations kind of forcing a dark cloud over this locker room for the Cavaliers. And maybe next time the Cavs are stuck in a tight situation, they can get help from today's sponsor, BetterHelp. Man, I wish life came with a user manual. It would make some daily mental struggles so much easier, and that's why I'm glad I have today's sponsor, BetterHelp. When it's not working for you, it's normal to feel stuck. Navigating any of life's challenges can make you feel unsure, whether it's a career change, a new relationship, or becoming a parent, or playing 2 overtimes against the Charlotte Hornets. Therapists at BetterHelp are trained to help you figure out the cause of challenging emotions and learn productive coping skills, which makes therapy the closest thing to a guided tour to the complex engine called you. And if you're a YouTube watcher, I just pointed at the camera. But BetterHelp has connected over 3 million people with licensed therapists. It's convenient and accessible anywhere, and it's 100% online. As the world's largest therapy service, BetterHelp has matched 3 million people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists available 100% online, plus it's affordable. You just have to fill out a brief questionnaire to match with a therapist, and if things aren't clicking, you can just easily switch to a new therapist anytime. It couldn't be simpler. No waiting rooms, no traffic, no endless search for the right therapist. Learn more and save 10% on your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedonnba. That's help, HELP.com/lockedonnba. Hey everyone, we're back with more Locked On Cavs, and I want to thank you all for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. For your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast, man. So, fun fact, guys. Did you know that in 1991, the Cleveland Cavaliers defeated the Miami Heat 148-80, and it's the second largest margin of victory in NBA history? with that in mind, Sunday's win doesn't come as close to that point-wise, but it was still a bona fide ass-kicking on Cleveland's part. Sure, the Cavs started out slow. They looked a little sluggish to start the game, but at the end of the day, the star power for the Cavs, whether it was Darius Garland and Evan Mobley in this case, did damage the Heat in a myriad of ways. But they're the only two of Cleveland's 4 stars to really step up against Miami. Jarrett Allen has banged around for most of the night and had to deal with a lot of physicality from the Heat. You saw him getting a little testy with the refs at times and questioning some calls. I think if he was available to speak to the press, it's something I want to ask. Like, hey, do you think the officials are calling things fairly for you? Do you think you're getting fouled or not? Like, he got whacked in the face against the Hornets the other night, and then the last 2-minute report, it said it wasn't a foul at all. It was the correct no call in that situation. So you throw up your hands and wonder, like, one, is it being a big guy, like you have to deal with the physicality of the league, or also when is fair and when do you make the right call? I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's something worth watching, and Jarrett Allen just wasn't great against the Heat, and going against Bam Adebayo definitely does that. And in the other vein, Darius Garland's backcourt partner, Donovan Mitchell, meanwhile, saw his offensive motor run cold because the Heat threw a lot of various zone defenses against him, and I think even though Kyle Lowry just isn't the same player he was offensively anymore, he played effective defense at times on Mitchell, just kind of just put a stymie on him and kind of just make him uncomfortable. And that's an Eric Spoelstra coach team for you. I think he understood the assignment. Like, Mitchell is the primary offensive motor for this team. Like, Garland is the primary initiator, facilitator. He has a propensity to go off, but like, he's looking more to get everyone else involved, whereas Mitchell will look to get people involved, but also is very comfortable getting buckets when you need him to. And the Heat definitely understood the assignment and shut him down. So in the inverse of things, you saw a lot of the role players stepping up in Mitchell and Allen's stead. Again, Lamar Stevens was awesome like he was the other night against Charlotte, again with the starting unit. Honestly, it is so impressive that he's able to be so locked in despite seldom playing, especially like the start of this regular season, or if you think about last year when he hardly played at all, but he was kind of like just that cultural leader for the Cavs. But he was able to step up when Lauri Markkanen was dealing with COVID and injuries, or when Evan Mobley was injured, or when Jarrett Allen was injured, and the Cavs just kind of kept things in flux constantly. Like, Lamar Stevens, again, not going to give you a ton of points. He's not going to give you a lot of shooting, but he's consistent enough, and he plays with enough energy, and he understands what he is as a player. And I think he has just the full faith and trust of this coaching staff that it makes sense why Cleveland shook things up and looked to him to start things. And for now, he's the right solution for this for the Cavs. And the reason why I say for now is when Dean Wade comes back, he'll likely start over Stevens, just because Wade is another guy similar to Stevens, but he provides more shooting, and I think is a little bit more interesting in this lineup because it makes more 2 7-footers a bit more functional. Because sources have shared with me from multiple fronts, G League, NBA, League, within the Cavs, everything else, is just like Dean Wade is all but confirmed to be the starting 3 for the Cavs once he's fully healthy. And for context, he has an infection in his knee that he tore his meniscus in, according to JB Bickerstaff. It's not bursitis, as it was previously reported, but he's on antibiotics. He's recovering. But Bickerstaff kind of wants to ease Wade back in because it's a bit of a red flag when you have an infection in your knee and you want to just make sure he's physically right and also just in shape, and more than anything, probably in shape to handle starter minutes too. But either way, Lamar Stevens has played really well again. He has made the case that he needs to be a consistent threat in this Cavaliers offense, and also just like a consistent threat in the Cavaliers rotation. Like, you're going to have the uncomfortable conversation, like, okay, maybe we take minutes from Isaac Okoro, maybe we take minutes from Cedi Osman, who we'll talk about those two in a second, but we maybe take minutes from Kevin Love. We take minutes from somewhere, maybe like reduce minutes and expand the rotation a bit so you can fit Lamar Stevens in the scheme of things, because Lamar has more than earned his spot in the Cavs rotation at the end of the day. And again, while Stevens was great, the real players to step up were the dynamic duo of Isaac Okoro and Cedi Osman. Clearly, if you're listening up to this point, these are 2 names you expected to hear carry the Cavaliers on Sunday night against the Heat. The other night against Charlotte, Osman hardly played. I happened to ask him about this postgame after JB Bickerstaff called his energy funky but electric. And thankfully, I have the clip here, so let's listen to what Osman had to say to me.
I'm just trying to be consistent that way. Whenever my number is called, I'll be ready and try to bring the best to the team. And I'm just glad I was able to do that tonight, and hopefully, every other night. I'll just be ready every time whenever my number is called.
And it's interesting to note because Osman, again, hardly played against the Hornets. He has been in and out of the rotation a lot. People have been kind of banging their fists at their desk or table or armchair or whatever the hell you do when you watch the Cavs. I don't know. You live your life, man. But that Osman should be playing, and I have my reservations about it, and I understand where JB Bickerstaff is coming from because, yes, Osman in theory provides you shooting, provides you playmaking, but we'll talk about this more in the third segment because I have a whole spiel on it. But it's more than anything like Osman later on said that he just tries to maintain a positive attitude despite maybe not playing for himself and also just everyone else in the locker room. And I think that's a really good thing to say here. Like Darius Garland said, he's kind of the class clown. He's the biggest jokester in the locker room. He tries to make people happy. And then after he shared that, I asked Isaac Okoro about Osman's attitude and how it impacts the team on a nightly basis, and he had a pretty awesome response, especially for a guy who hardly talks like Isaac Okoro.
Yeah, Jetty's one annoying person, so I mean, he stays positive throughout the locker room. Everybody loves Jetty. I mean, like if we have bad games or anything like that, like I always tell my friends, like there's no way you could come back to our locker room and just be mad because everybody's just so positive. So, I mean, like it's just a good time to be around everybody around this team.
And I think that's refreshing to hear at the end of the day because the Cavs have heightened expectations this season. They have them after how last season went, and things just got amplified after they acquired Donovan Mitchell from the Utah Jazz. And I think when you look at just this 5-game losing skid the Cavs went through, it is easy to get caught up in the moment and let this emotionally consume you on a day-to-day basis. But the fact that the Cavs are just so steady and so consistent and it tracks with everything else, to just everybody who's told me about it, or just like when people speak publicly on it, like the Cavs aren't overly concerned with this losing skid they kind of dealt with, or the fact that like, hey, Donovan Mitchell's having a crappy night, or Jared Allen's just not getting it together offensively, but yeah, defensively he's providing you an impact. So it's nice to hear that there's guys who may not get consistent minutes in Okoro and Osman step up to the plate and provide on the court, and also like behind the scenes, like they are constant guys who are helping maintain this sustainable culture that JB Bickerstaff and the Cavs are trying to build. And it's refreshing to hear that, just like that these two genuinely have an admiration for one another and that they just want to see the team succeed and win, because I think that's the biggest thing is like those two don't have consistent minutes and they were kind of turned to because of injury in terms of like just the depth in this rotation, but they played well when the number was called upon them and they had expanded minutes. But at the same time, like they're maintaining a positive attitude and realizing the reality of the situation, realizing it's much bigger than the individual. It's the entire amalgamation of what this Cavs team is. And it's definitely worth talking about and just monitoring going forward. But we'll talk about that more in segment 3, since the Cavs are going to have to probably lean on them a lot again today against the Hawks. But before I do that, I want to give a quick word from today's second sponsor, PrizePicks. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. To play, pick 2 to 5 players, and if they go score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can up to 10 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people, it's just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sports that you watch, whether that includes NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college hoops, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf, Eurobasket, cricket, FIFA World Cup, I bet, and more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy, and they offer safe and fast withdrawals. They're currently operational in over 30 states and Canada, and if you want to check it out, download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up for daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for instant deposit match up to $100. So, at the top, let's just be frank. Cleveland forward Kevin Love has a hairline fracture in his right thumb, according to the team. Love suffered it during a rebound attempt in the third quarter against the Charlotte Hornets, where he was going for a rebound like this. If you're watching on YouTube, see my hands like this, and then they had a player going like this. And it was a foul called against Love, I believe, or something like that, and Bickerstaff said he had it, but Bickerstaff, that's just his spiel on it. And according to the team, meanwhile, he'll likely be doubtful. and be evaluated on a daily basis. And it's a little weird of a situation to phrase it like that, but it makes more sense because Love went from doubtful to a game time decision during Sunday's game against Miami Heat, like a couple hours leading up to it, because the Cavs didn't have shoot around that morning. They had a walkthrough right before the game, and I think that's when they evaluated him and figured it out. And in the end, Love was shut down prior to the game, and we'll probably see more of this song and dance for the foreseeable future in regard to Love until he's fully healed. And the problem with losing Love is that he's a consistent bench scoring threat for the Cavs and also a consistent rebounding option for the Cavs, and also probably one of the more consistent three-point options as well. He's averaging 11.3 points, 7.4 boards, 2.6 assists, and about 21.3 minutes per game this season, and that's the sweet spot for Kevin Love. He's working well, and I think that's a huge loss, especially when you don't have Dean Wade out there as well, so you have a lack of bench shooting or just shooting in general, just kind of at that bigger forward spot. And with Love out, we saw Jetty Osman and Isaac Okoro get a boatload of minutes in his place, and against the Hawks, they responded well. Osman had 20 points and 12 rebounds on the night and led the team in terms of plus-minus. He was even more impactful than Donovan Mitchell for context. And Okoro, meanwhile, connected on two three-pointers, and if you're not a regular Cavs viewer, this is a really big freaking deal, and he was an integral two-way option off the bench for the Cavs. He kind of set the tone early for the game. Like, Osman was a little hit or miss in terms of his just shot going in, but he was at least playing with energy. But like, Okoro had a lot of positive two-way impact, forcing turnovers, and was just really hustling, and he was hitting three-pointers, and then petered off a little bit in the second half. But this is a win if you're Isaac Okoro, because he's been a non-factor, and I think that's part of the problem too, is I don't know if you consistently can get that from either of these two players, because that's the issue, is like, you have to lean on these guys with Love out, and sure, they wreaked havoc on Sunday night, but it was against Kyle Lowry, Bam Adebayo, and the Sioux Falls Skyforce, the G League affiliate of the Miami Heat. Okoro, again, has been a ghost, relatively speaking, on offense this year, and while Osman isn't afraid to shoot it, he doesn't have the full trust of JB Bickerstaff due to his lackadaisical effort on defense. And I talked with somebody at Eurobasket with connections to the Turkish national team, and they say Jetty plays with happy feet on defense, where he kind of overcommits and he plays a little too hard. And I think the issue is with Jetty Osman is you need him to only do X, Y, and Z as a player, and you ask him to do A, B, C, X, Y, and Z. The A, B, and C really mess up X, Y, and Z, and it becomes too much for him on the floor. And I think that's why the Cavs kind of have a short leash on him. And if like they don't like what they see effort-wise from Jetty, they'll turn to somebody else. So what be damned? Like, even if there's guys who just aren't working functionally, and the problem with that is for for today's game against the Hawks and possibly the next several games, Cleveland may have no choice but to lean on these two again, for better or for worse. This is because Caris Levert sprained his ankle in the second quarter against the Miami Heat, and when I asked JB Bickerstaff about it post-game, he said that he thinks Levert will be okay, and there's no swelling at this time, but more than anything, it's going to be up to Cleveland's training staff to determine whether or not Levert is available Monday or even Wednesday against Portland, or just beyond after the Thanksgiving holiday. And for those listening today, because this is Monday's show, we won't really know until lunchtime whether or not Levert and Love will play, but this might be a scenario where the Cavs lean heavily on their offensive engines and Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, because they're the alpha omega, the beginning and end of their offense. And you ask for something from Evan Mobley and Jared Allen a little bit, but you ask more for those two, and Mobley and Allen just kind of lock things down defensively, and then you just hope and pray that on the second game of a back-to-back, you can get continued production like you did from Okoro and Osman, so that the Cavs don't have to lean too heavily on their starters. And this is where some of the concerns kind of come into play. Because, yeah, the Cavs just got rid of the stink of a 5-game losing streak, and they're technically on a 2-game winning streak going for 3 right now. But there can be some quiet concerns with the fact that you're missing 3 key guys, let's be frank, because Dean Wade is a key piece as well, but you also have Kevin Love, who's probably going to be out. You have Caris Levert, who might be out, because in the moment, no swelling is good when it comes to ankle, but you got to see how he's doing physically the morning after. I think that's the key component of it all, too. It's just like, how's his ankle looking the day after? And again, Cleveland's training staff will determine what the best course of action is, but if I were the Cavs, maybe shut him down, because it's a guy with a history of foot and ankle and knee injuries and just injuries across the board. You don't want to aggravate things or make things worse. So you got to lean more on Okoro and Osman, and that's a bit of a, I wish I had a red flag in here. I could just hoist that mofo real quick and just really say, like, hey, let's be a little concerned here, guys. But I guess the only nice thing is because the Cavs just delivered a full-on ass-kicking to the Heat, is Bickerstaff was able to rest the majority of his core for the better part of Sunday's game. And I guess that's nice because Atlanta is coming off a day of rest, and we're going to see how it goes, because just looking ahead to this game in general, like, it's going to be exciting. Like, the Hawks were the first team, really, besides the Timberwolves traded for Rudy Gobert, yes, and we weren't sure what was going to happen to Donovan Mitchell, but the Hawks then swooped in, pun intended, because it's a bird team, to get DeJounte Murray from the Spurs, and then maybe they do something funky with John Collins down the line, too, because I don't understand why John Collins is always in trade rumors, but the reason why I'm talking on a podcast to you and everybody else right now, instead of working in the NBA front office, it's my go-to line this year, but the Hawks are an interesting team stylistically because they match the Cavs really well. And in terms of power moves, Cleveland followed suit soon after Atlanta got DeJounte Murray when they got Donovan Mitchell. So, like, these are the two teams in the Eastern Conference who made a clear power move to level up their spot in where they stand in the pecking order of the East, because it's Milwaukee and Boston at the top, maybe Philly soon after them. And then, like, you have the Hawks and the Cavs kind of, like, trying to level up and get to that next spot so they can, if you're Atlanta, make the Eastern Conference Finals again and kind of prove that run you had a few years ago wasn't a fluke under Nate McMillan, and then you just kind of level up from there and see what you have. Or if you're the Cavs, just make the freaking playoffs the first time without LeBron since the 97-98 season, which is a huge deal because at the end of the day, again, Kevin Love and Cedi Osman are the most seasoned players here, because Love is a championship and has played in 4 finals, and Osman has played in 1 final in 2018 against the Golden State Warriors. So we'll see what happens. I think the Cavs being banged up is a little unfortunate. The Hawks have the luxury of almost a clean bill of health. Bogdan Bogdanovic is still out with a wrist injury, and I know he's not really a key piece for the Hawks anymore, but like, he still is an option for them as a shooter off the bench if he was healthy. And they have a couple guys on G League assignment too, which is fine. So the Cavs are going to have to dig deep again. I think kind of maybe not worry so much about playing on the second of back-to-back and see if they can hang with the Hawks and maybe say, like, hey, we're the team who made the better level up move. And I think at the end of the day, like, yeah, DeJounte Murray's been awesome for the Hawks, but the Cavs are the team who made the bigger move at the end of the day, because Donovan Mitchell is an MVP caliber player. And this is no disrespect to DeJounte Murray, but Donovan Mitchell, in my opinion, should be in the running for the MVP at the end of the year. And he's been Cleveland's most valuable player. He's just been so consistent. This Heat game on Sunday notwithstanding, of course, but like, he's just been awesome for the Cavs, and I think that's just something they can monitor. And if you're Cleveland, like, you'd much rather would have Donovan Mitchell than DeJounte Murray at the end of the day, because the Cavs were also in conversation for Murray as well, according to some things I heard around the league and over the summer this year too. But we'll see how it goes. It's going to be a fun game if you're just a basketball fan like I am, or a basketball observer / somewhat enjoyer in Chris Manning, but it's going to be a fun game at the end of the day. We just have to see how healthy the Cavs are so that maybe they don't have to lean too heavily on their starters. And I guess the nice thing at the end of the day is the Cavs did play a back-to-back. They will take Tuesday off after that and just completely rest and get their guys recharged, and then play Wednesday against Portland, who does not have Damian Lillard at the moment because he has suffered an injury that is going to keep him out for on a week-to-week basis. I don't remember the injury off the top of my head, but Chris Haynes reported it. But either way, it's going to be a fun game. We'll be talking about it on Tuesday's show, and you'll hear all about it when Chris rejoins me. And you guys won't be subjected to one monotone white guy, but two monotone white guys. And just make sure you're subscribed to us on YouTube so you don't miss it. And be sure to rate us 5 stars anywhere you can listen to a podcast, because we want to bless your ear holes and give you a 5-star experience while we're inside your ear canals. Until then, I don't want to say goodbye, so let's just pretend I was never here.
Stars, my